Hey guys, welcome to the Art of NGFs. And the host of this whatever is Garrett Zahn. And we love you very, 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 very much.
Very, very, very much, you retards. Woo! All right. Hey, everybody. This is Garrett with Command Z and the Art of Not Giving a Fuck, the Art of NGF Undo Suffering podcast. And today I have a special interview or conversation that I want you guys to hear. That's between me and a former friend on Facebook named Joel. And I'll just go ahead and let you decide for yourself. Give it a listen. But the main topic was on the ubiquity of deception in our times. This was recorded over a year ago, and since then my worldview has changed on some fundamental levels, but I think the conversation was good anyway. And so I want to, release it for you guys. So as always, if you're into the podcast, I encourage you to listen to other episodes as well. And if you find this Radical Undoing stuff appealing, check the website, radicalundoing.com. You can also get in touch with me there via my schedule, and we'll try to figure out what level of training is going to work best for you. So take a look at the website, make sure that you're on our email list, and without further banter, here's the conversation between myself and Joel. Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for jumping on. We're back again for another Art of NGF, whatever this is. Some people call it a podcast, but we don't call it a podcast. So the Art of NGF, whatever this is. And we're here today with Joel. He's my longtime Facebook friend, whatever that means. But we have a rapport out of nowhere. And maybe we'll get into how, it doesn't even matter. But we're here now. So I wanted to just jump in. This can go any direction, but we'll see. I think we'll let you, the listeners, if there are any, determine if this is useful to you. But as always, even if we get all intellectual and rambly or whatever happens here, there's going to be nuggets that you can use. And what I want you to advise you to do is never let anything that's exciting to you about what we're saying or any episode of this not a podcast thing, make use of something. Grab one thing that we say that's interesting to you and go out and test it. Go out and examine it, explore it, find out more about it. Like, don't just let this be another thing where you listen, get excited, and then forget about it. Like, let this point of presence of you listening to us take the opportunity to grab something from it and run with it. Like divert from the repetition, get off the rails of your fate, somehow, if that's possible. If you're excited about it, run with it. Go all in on an investigation, or have an adventure, or or get in touch with me if you want an adventure that I'll assign for you, based on what I can see about you. But don't just let it be something you listen to and then forget about. Go do something about it. That's always the instruction here. So that being said, this quote from this film, and did you ever see the film Jesus' Son?
No, I've never seen that film. No.
Okay. And they got the title from the song Heroin by Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. So the song, like, and I feel just like Jesus' son. And he's talking about when he's shooting up. And so then whoever wrote the film, or wrote the title of the film, called it Jesus's Son. Because the film's about a kind of wandering hitchhiking guy who's a junkie, who then recovers over the course of the film. So spoiler alert, if you didn't see it since the 90s, well, fuck off, I'm not going to protect people and not talk about the movie. I'm sorry, go somewhere else. But
I haven't seen that. And
so it doesn't even matter. But here's the quote from the film that came up. I don't know why I haven't thought of it for a long time. Oh, and Jack Black appears in the film in a really hilarious way. But
people say I look like him, actually.
That's so weird. Life. So you're going to love how Jack Black appears. He says the line, "I save lives," and it's in such a hilarious context. It's so he's an orderly at a hospital who's constantly taking all the drugs out of the drug cabinet. So the quote from the film is, the context of it is a guy's like going completely mad on the street corner, just like, and he's getting hauled away. And the main character says, the narrator, but in the voice of the main character, says, "No more pretending for him. He was completely and openly a mess. Meanwhile, the rest of us go on pretending to each other." So I wanted that as like a jump off point for our conversation. And then there were three little, now let's leave the other ones till we get there. Let's just collapse this so I see them. It collapses so I see those, but let's just start there. Does that do anything for you, that quote?
Can you repeat that quote one more time, please?
Yeah, no problem. No more pretending for him. He was completely and openly a mess. Meanwhile, the rest of us go on pretending to each other.
And that's in the context of after some sort of scene where he's going crazy or something.
The main character, I believe, if my memory serves me, and it often does, that he was in some sort of mental hospital situation, but as a recovered addict doing either volunteer or paid work. And if I'm correct, the scene was a guy was being brought in for his first, initiation into the mental hospital as a patient, as a client, let's say, to be friendly. And as he's on his way, and he's just flipping out. Like they have to hold him, and he's not saying any words. He's just screaming and flailing, and like the main character is observing him in like a almost admirable or loving, compassionate way. Not judgment, not that he's in any way wrong, but that he's finally let go of something that the rest of us are clinging to desperately, is the way I understood it.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction to that was that, similar to what you said, he was admiring a man for ceasing to agree to conform to the shared idea of sanity. And he'd finally been honest for the first time, while the rest of us fakes carried on pretending to be normal as defined by everyone else apart from ourselves, essentially.
Yes. Wow, what a fucking description, man. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that does, I suppose that thought does appeal to me in some way, because the whole concept of the shared idea of sanity is a really interesting one, because you can only be sane relative to a different set of behavior, right?
Right.
And this is why. So, for example, there's a guy that I started paying attention to not so long ago called Professor Sam Vaknin, and he's got a few degrees, and he does have a degree in psychology. Not that I'm without criticisms of his work in psychology at large. But similar to yourself.
It's not his fault. Psychology is built on a false premise. So don't even worry.
I think there's some value in it. But before we get into that debate, what's interesting about one of his lectures is that when in the study of personality disorders, it first occurred to me that a personality disorder is not in fact a personality disorder, but rather a social disorder. Because personality disorders themselves are actually peculiar to varying different cultures around the world in different times. For example, there are disorders in Japan that exist only in Japan and nowhere else.
Well, can you give an example? Do you know an example off the top of your head?
Yeah. So you probably heard that different cultures' moral systems are driven by whether guilt or shame or a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And Japan is a shame-driven society.
Okay. Which the saving face and the saving face.
Yeah.
Committing suicide, the death of one's master, or
seppuku. Yeah, it's rooted in
shame upon the family name and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, so it's not. Yeah, it's a family name thing, but it's also a warrior philosophy rooted in the Bushido.
It's in the Hagakure. It's in the samurai texts. It's
precisely that, right? And there's a personality disorder in Japan that exists there that's nowhere else. And basically, it's not only an intense embarrassment, not for yourself, but almost like a third-hand embarrassment for the people that will feel embarrassment for you. So imagine feeling cringeworthy at yourself for making other people cringe at you cringing. Like it's almost like it's bizarre. It's truly bizarre. And
it's like one of those. Yeah, it's like there's a sense of infinite regress there.
Yeah, it is almost infinitely regressive. You're embarrassed for people who feel embarrassed for your embarrassments. It's bizarre.
See, Hannibal comes to mind right away. Okay, especially Mads Mikkelsen Hannibal, but Hannibal in general. Many, many times throughout the whole legacy of his adventures, he's trapped. From the perspective of everyone around him, he's trapped. They think we've caught him. We've got him. Now, the only reason he's actually alive is because in real life, they would figure out some way to kill him after he escaped multiple times. They're going to end up, whether, on the sly or overtly or covertly, they're going to kill him. And at some point, it becomes societally acceptable to do so. And you see that in cases like Timothy McVeigh. There was 10 to 20,000 pages of evidence left out from the prosecution that during the discovery process. So in any other court case in the world, they would delay execution for a long time. Sure. But that information came to light and they sped the execution up to like within days after that revelation. And then after he's dead, the defense is like, well, yeah, we could probably have gotten him out based on this information or at least a retrial. But he's dead now. What's the point of spending all this money and time to go argue against for this case? Now, of course, there's reason behind it, because if you let the legal system fray too much at those edges, people stop believing in it, which means it ceases to function in the way it would function.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I mean, with respect to sanity, the reason why it's an interesting subject and why I related that to personality/social disorders is because what different cultures classify as personality disorders just happen to be behaviors that are considered hugely undesirable within the context of the particular society that they live within.
Yes.
But they're not necessarily considered undesirable in other cultures. So, for example, there are some cultures where arrogance is more welcome than others.
Yes. And somewhere arrogance is required. There's no way to do business in Colombia without arrogance. There's just no way. Or in any Latin culture, you have to fucking perform on, and you don't. You can get around dress code. You can wear whatever the fuck you want, but to the degree to which you get around dress code in any given situation relies on your ability to read and adopt the right attitude. You know what I mean? That will diffuse. You won't need any props. So it's the difference between a magician and a mentalist. On the stage level, the magician relies on props and gimmicks, period. That's the whole show. Whereas the mentalist might get you to think that your attention should be focused on some props, but those are the distraction or whatever. Or the mentalist might let you think that he's failed at the last 3 tricks, but those were all the prelude to his real performance. Or even if they weren't, he has 7 reactions he'll roll the dice. The mentalist will roll the dice and give something a try. But for the mentalist, there's no failure because he uses the audience's perception of him as having failed at a trick for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So there's no way Darren Brown, for example, can fail at any performance. And but from what I've heard from other high-level mentalists, he's one of the best. He takes the most risk in his performance.
He has failed. He has failed numerous times, but they're just not the ones that get in the final cut. And I've actually seen
his own failures too, because he posts his failures when he's laughing.
Yeah.
He gets nervous, just like the rest of us, but he's willing to go through it.
Sure. Yeah. I've seen. I went to see him live. I saw him. He hypnotized my sister. Actually.
Oh, tell us about the experience. Let's dive into this. This is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite. I was in England at the time. I was with my family. I think it was around the Christmas period, and in England, people typically go to the theatre and pantomime round about the Christmas time. It's 'tis the season and all that.
I love the season.
Christmas anyway, but yeah, it was an evening with Darren Brown, and he just bombarded the audience's brains with absolute sorcery for about 90 minutes straight. I actually think part of his part of his act is not allowing your brain to catch up with what just happened. He will move on to something else way before he gives you the opportunity to think about
I've utilized that exact tactic of his because I read his book, Tricks of the Mind. He gives away a lot in there. It's just that you could, here's the thing, it's the information age. You could publish, all the world's secrets are published. They're available right now at our fingertips. All, literally almost all. Now there's caveats there. There's exceptions because no matter how much you read about what goes on inside a Masonic lodge, no matter how reliable that data is, you will never know that you know unless you've been inside one. No matter how many volumes of information, if you and I read 1 billion books about what it feels like to swim in a river, it's not ever going to be the same, no matter how accurate the data is, as the data we get from going in the fucking river. This leads us to one thing, but I want to hear about the show. So, but there's a quote that I've been throwing around, or of axiom, or whatever you want to call it, that I say to people is there is only one true scientist.
I don't know what that means.
I want to see if the quote is.
I'm assuming what's meant by that quote is that being as all, experience is fundamentally subjective, meaning the only person that could ever measure it is the individual, being yourself.
Yeah, only one true scientist. Now, I'm not discounting that science as we understand it. These people doing the scientific method, going all in on specific details of a specific discipline, does yield usable results. Okay, so there's some utility in the way that science functions. Now, in the last 10 or 20 years, I've watched science definition. The popular definition of science means what I'm told by people in lab coats on TV. You know what I mean? Like or if I read a magazine article, that's a magazine article based on another article, based on another article, based on another article, based on a New York Times article, based on an abstract written by an author who never read the whole study or even comprehended what the nature of the study was, and then took what they understood to be the conclusions from an abstract and then published it as if it's a truth that has been established, a conclusion, a final piece of knowledge that ice cream is good for you, or like, you know what I mean? Like trace what science says about coffee over the last 40 years in newspapers. It's so good for you, drink more. And then the next day, it's so horrible for you. And it just goes back and forth. And still to this day, you could find all the opinions about it online right now, all published within a week. That coffee's good for you. That coffee kills you. That, you know what I'm saying?
I think that's most typical of particularly of the field of nutrition.
Exactly. That's the fucking poster child for what we're talking about.
I am literally at a point now where I am ready to regard the field of nutrition as like 99% pseudoscience.
You think it's only 99%? I think it's like 0.999999.
Yeah, it's such. It doesn't seem to me that there's actually much of a scientific way of testing anything that isn't actually just painfully obvious in the first place. Nothing else.
Way too many fucking variables. And then even of the variables that are known, I'd wager that there's an insane volume of variables that are unknown. Because I've come across just in 30 years of doing this search and seeking thing, or I did the seeking really all in for 15 years till it came undone. Thank God. If you're seeking, one would want at some point to find, maybe, you know what I mean? This is the danger of making seeking into a lifestyle and identifying oneself as a yogi, as a seeker, as a meditator, as any fucking thing to anyone else. Because the moment you find, at least for me, the moment I found what I was seeking, which took painful, horrific processes of seeing that I didn't even know what I was searching for in the first place or why I was searching. Inevitably, it was some kind of pain situation that then got layered over into I'm a seeker and you get the ladies if you go to the yoga conference. You know what I mean? Like, dude, like it's insane. So if you identified as a seeker, my whole business, my whole trip, my whole undoing thing, even the podcast is to say like, what the fuck are you actually seeking? Because you get lost in 1,000 New Age books. And at that point, you don't even know what you're looking for anymore. And then it's one day it's chanting this, the next day it's spinning around thinking that you're a Sufi because of that. And the next day and then ignoring all data that's proving you to be totally fucking retarded, you know? I'm talking about myself.
I was going to say, just to jump in there a moment.
Yeah.
You know, I live rather in Bali, and there is a huge number of people that arrive in Bali with the sole intent of doing some soul searching in inverted
like as if the soul was there waiting for him to search, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, and it's what's really remarkable is how little variation there is in people's personalities.
Yes, robotic.
The people that I mean, like I can. It's really funny. One of the really telling kind of tests is if you swipe through Tinder, and there are so many cardboard cutouts and walking, talking cliches, and they all take on board that rented personality suit of being someone of depth, someone who's soul searching. It's always peppered with various different meditative practices.
There's flavors to it, right? Styles and flavors and colors.
Yeah, I'm not saying any of that is invalid in of itself, but it's when something becomes so predictable and so it lacks so much in it.
And masquerades as unique.
Yeah, it just completely lacks any sense of individuation whatsoever across so many different people. And
those people will call the person who does. This is where right back to what we were talking about before. If a person goes all in on one of those meditative practices, and most of them are bullshit, but I've found ones that are fucking real, and I've gone all in on so many, it would spin people's fucking minds. You know, I joined the groups. I joined the Crowley group. I did the rituals. I've been initiated. I've joined I've gone to I lived in California. I went to all the workshops. I went to all the fucking shit. But I was honest with myself when it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And I found that being honest with others who were there, when I talked to each of them individually, it wasn't doing what they wanted it to do either, except the social pressure and the presentation of some woman half dressed presenting some garbage in front of a group, and everyone just does what she says and they sit there and everyone pretends to have a profound experience.
Yeah.
But when I talked to these people individually, some of them wept. When one woman I met in California, I was like, yeah, you know, most people don't know what the fuck meditation is. I think it was prepackaged by gurus in India on purpose to come to the West and take advantage of the naivety of the fucking Westerners who think that it's exotic in India. Meanwhile, the place has, a giant garbage dump in a lot of cities, you know. Why are you searching for a religion there when you haven't even read fucking Jack Kerouac? If you live in California, if you want to read some spiritual text, read fucking Kerouac, or read Henry David Thoreau, or read Walt Whitman, or read the guy who wrote poems that lived on that, like Robinson Jeffers at Carmel Point, you know, who's lived with his body in that landscape and used the words that we use. You know what I mean? You don't need a spiritual text from India. Why are you searching there? That's such a long path.
Yeah. Well, the people
because they're robotically following the crowd. But the crowd has this bizarre, like punk rock crowds have this, because I used to be a punk rocker. Protest groups, environmentalists have this, vegans have this, where they think of that. So the aspect of the group, one trait of the group is that they think they're counters, like it's this trait of rebellion. And yet there's no rebellion in it whatsoever. There's just an adherence to a set of opinions arbitrarily arrived at in some way or the other. And then that social pressure makes it so that, now back to the seeking, if you're going to all these workshops and you're going and you've done 50,000 different types of breathing and meditation, and you think Wim Hof has special powers or something, he does have special powers. He found a very good marketing team. I need those special powers too. But you know what I'm saying? That's the special powers of Wim Hof. All of us humans are exactly the same. There's no special guru anywhere that can save you. There's no spiritual teacher. It's not only unnecessary, it's impossible. It can't exist. We can learn things from people. But let me loop back and then I'll stop. I promise you. So the seeking, the danger is identifying with anything. First of all, identifying with any group, with anything, with any traits, instead of just identifying with the raw, organic, flowing thing that you are. The only provable thing to oneself is, like, let's say consciousness or awareness. That's the only thing I can find if I go on the inside. There's no personality there that's fixed. There's no self that's there like dictating my behavior. There's just some nothingness. And then there's perception, some kind of perception. That's all I can find. So it doesn't matter if I found that through Jewish meditation, through chanting, through fucking spinning around in circles, through rock climbing, through martial arts, whatever the fuck. It doesn't matter. And so when I talked to a woman, and this was consistent with, well, like, let's say thousands of people I've talked to about the exact same topic and workshops I conducted with people and all this shit. This woman is an example of all these people. And I said, hey, so what do you do? You know, what are you into? And she's like, well, I do this meditation thing. And she looked sad. And when she was saying it, but she was trying to present as being a seeker, trying to get me to see that she's a seeker by talking about these topics. And I said, well, what? I don't even think anyone knows what meditation really is. It's something so fucking simple. And I think most of what people are doing, if there's any recording, if there's any other guide of the meditation, a guided meditation is actually just like a form of hypnosis. It's a guided meditation. It's not presence. You're focusing on the intellect and going into the world of words and having a fantasy. Imagine a tree and da da da. And it can be a therapeutic fantasy. That's totally provable in the field of hypnosis. But it's not being present with yourself, which is what meditation truly is. What yoga means is the nullification of the modifications of the mind. So it's undoing all the modifications of the mind, getting back to whatever the fucking root is, the ground zero point, the presence.
I mean,
it's so utterly simple, something we experience every single day, but we think it's going to be an acid trip. So the seeker, so this woman, and I think her name was Lindsay, and it was in Santa Barbara, California. And I said, well, most people don't understand it. And they think you're supposed to stop your thoughts, but that's the lie that the gurus tell you because it's a subscription plan. Then you have to go to the guru forever, and he can say your results will come after 60 years practice, and he's ahead of you. So you believe that lie, and he only does his talks. He only talks to you when he's in some state, and he borrows on the fact that you've put him on a pedestal. You've given him superpowers that you don't think you have. Therefore, you have to pay the guru to receive the goodness, the satsang, the fucking enlightenment that you already are and live within, and there's nothing more that the guru has than you have besides a good marketing plan. And so she started weeping when I said this, and I was amazed. I just met her, and she starts crying, and I was like, what's going on? Like, because I said all meditations, I created something called fake meditation, where you just sit there, and there's no rules at all. You close your eyes, and whatever the fuck happens during that time, and no timer, nothing, is the meditation. So I just short-circuited all the bullshit. And I did it out of necessity when I searched so many things and I saw everyone was lying. Luckily, somehow I was an asshole enough to call it out in myself and then in other people. But that's how I ended up having to leave all the groups because I kept asking, no, you can't tell me 30 years till I get some results. Fuck you, dude. I'm not even guaranteed I'm going to live next week. I want results fucking now if I'm going to do this stupid practice with whatever. Yes, I get that repetition over years is going to produce different results. Yes, I accept that, just like with lifting weights or whatever. But if I have questions and I'm going to do this stupid practice because you told me that that's where the answer is, there better be some fucking results. Not just, in 30 years, I'll mimic your life and then I'll get results. I can't wager that. I don't have time to do that wager unless there's some fucking reason to in the beginning. So that's why I never got lost as a seeker. But this woman starts weeping. And it goes back to where we began. And when I told her, just sit there, forget all the books you read, forget all the teachers, all the YouTube videos, if you can, like burn it all and just sit still every morning and sit still every night. And whatever happens while you're sitting still, if you're lost in thoughts the whole fucking time, that's the meditation. You cannot judge yourself for it. Just fucking sit. If your eyes open for a while, don't think, I'm wrong because my eyes open. No, that was part of it. So you accept anything that happened when you sat down for your fake meditation from beginning to end, and end was whenever the fuck you decided to end. Fully self-determined. No guru, no teaching, no teacher, nothing to live up to, nothing to attain to. Just sit there and then see what happens in your life. Is it better when you sit there in the morning and at night or not? If it's not, scrap it. If it is, keep going. You see what I mean? That to me is the caveman level of seeking. Be honest with what you fucking are trying to find. And then go try different ways to find it and be honest when they don't work. Don't repeat them when they don't work. And if your friends are all pretending like it works, dig into them a little. Hey, did you feel?
I'll tell you the problem.
So go ahead. I've gone off, but I think it ties back in. So
I get what you're saying. I think one of the problems is with these kind of practices, as in yoga, meditation, breath work, and all of these things. Well, there is certainly a valid form of these endeavors for sure.
Totally. That's what I teach. The Radha Konduk, for example, and it's fucking crazy.
I totally accept that. Yeah. One of the problems is that there is no definition of success when you enter these hobbies, especially if you have the typical ignorance you would have as somebody who's never done it before. It's like, how do you know if it's working?
Yeah.
And secondly,
working for what? Working in what way?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm personally even more cynical than the average person you would find, because I've lived in Bali for 3 years, and I've seen, umpteen different gurus, which are essentially narcissists, masquerading as some sort of helping hand or guru, and a lot of it is as well is hedonism masquerading as some spiritual depth. I mean, a lot of them have group sex and all that kind of stuff. It's like, and a lot of them is, especially the way they incorporate drugs and stuff. Like, for example, I enjoy partaking in recreational drug use, as in when I say drugs, I mean that term loosely. For example,
even the term is a fucking issue. It's a problem. It's a scam. Because they get away with selling and pumping into the streets of US, for example, if you look at the last 30 years, the fentanyl fucking thing, the crisis, which most people ignore, but it's a crazy fucking death rate, incarceration rate that was not there 30 years ago. It didn't exist. And now it's pumped on the streets, but it's not, now it's considered drugs, but only once it's not prescribed. You see what I mean? These motherfuckers prescribe it. And so if I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist about it, but just follow the fucking money trail, because someone has to produce those things. They're not just growing in a backyard, and if you produce it on a massive scale, and it has to be bought and sold and shipped, and it's shipped via above board companies. And then they're allowed to advertise in magazines, on TV for these substances, which are more addictive than anything anyone can find on the street, more deadly. More higher rate of suicide from when trying to come off these drugs. So it's a subscription plan. You know what I mean? It's a what do you call that in business? The model where you charge monthly. So they're doing business using substances that are far more dangerous than stuff on the street, and they're putting that under the same umbrella with the word drugs. It's meant to give a negative valence to things that are not in the same category whatsoever as what they're selling, as what they're peddling. You know what I mean? So like some kid in California smokes a joint. You can't call that substance the same thing as you call a manufactured, death, insanity pill that's being marketed as the psychiatric, healing pill.
Oh, I mean, as I was saying, I've partook in all sorts of recreational drug use for the strict purpose of having a good time. It's no deeper than that. And that includes magic mushrooms, MDMA, a bit of Charlie here and there. Right.
So why not even see the seeking instead of as something that's going to make you okay or better or improve your life or get you somewhere that you want to be? When a person can get to ground zero, accept who they really are, then, for example, go to see some shaman and go walking on fire, because it's a fucking fun adventure, just like you talked about the recreational substance use.
But I didn't even apply that much meaning to it. I did it with the strict intent of having a good time. And the reason I mentioned that was because of the context we were speaking before about these kind of people who actually make out things that are actually things that make out things that are deeper than what they actually are. For example, you can go on so spiritual and enlightened, when really what you're doing is partying and having lots of group sex. And you're trying to front as if you're a higher, more enlightened being, because you're roaming on the island barefoot in jazzy trousers, looking like you're wearing some pajamas, like you're on some new level. And it's like, but there's no unique or individual aspect to that. It's like, it's nothing. It's no different to, maybe the hippies that existed in San Francisco in the 1970s. It's not like this is anything new. And
Yes.
at the same time, a lot of them talk the same, act the same, of the same sort of tastes. And the fact that I can see those behavioral patterns playing out so many times across so many different people just makes me realize that it's like there's nothing that's higher about this. There's nothing, that's sophisticated or intriguing about it. I just kind of think, well, you're just another person who's been, essentially possessed by a fashionable avant-garde idea, and it's
Right.
It's just that I just kind of look at that and just think, well, maybe I'm not sophisticated enough, but you know what I'm doing? See, when you're taking shrooms, you're trying to talk to the being beyond the universe and enlighten yourself. What I'm doing is dancing to the music I like and having a fucking laugh.
Yes, exactly.
I'm having a beer and having a fucking good time.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah, but you can
I love it.
follow that enlightened path if you want. And I'm convinced it's just like, no, you've just convinced yourself that, this is more sophisticated and spiritual than what it is. And it's like, It's not. For me, it's just like, it's just
and this
a
is
laugh.
where this relates to suffering. This is where it relates to suffering. Okay. The woman crying when she feels, and I felt her body, I'd see it. She relaxed suddenly so deeply when I told her that all the meditation that she's trying to do was fake, and that even the so-called guru can't stop his own thoughts. No one knows where thoughts come from. There's speculation. I've studied the brain science and all this stuff. There's speculation at best. And anytime they come to something that looks like a conclusion, there's like an equal and opposite fucking study that shows something else. And then people often, and I think they willingly, and I understand why, but willingly forget that correlation is not causation. It's just the most basic fucking premise. If you're going to start looking at anything mystical at all, if you're going to start doing rituals to make something happen, you have to fucking be real honest with yourself about interpreting results. You know what I mean? Like you see it in baseball or any sports where the baseball player put on the wrong colored socks by accident one day and then did his best game, and now he's going to wear that combination of socks forever. Now there's a reason behind that. There's actually, if you study the science behind what Darren Brown does, and he's duplicated a lot of these experiments with flair and style, but he's duplicated experiments from over the last 100 years of experimentation in that field. With amazing results, by the way. His duplication of experiments are amazing. But I read it in a Herb Dewey book about mentalism. He was known as the king of cold readers. He would go to cold reader conventions. Most people don't even know this shit exists. And I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, because I would rather, in some ways, I would rather be naive about some of these subjects still than know what I know about them, because it was more fun. And even Mark Twain talked about that.
There are moral arguments for the goodness of cold reading, particularly the ones that claim that they're talking to the dead relatives of the people that go to see them, and help them find closure. And it's
the cold reader. This is what I was getting to.
Like a moral lie. It's like
here's where we go. And Herb Dewey's ethics. Fuck, I should. You know what? I'm going to open the document because this is insane. You're speaking right out of what the study that Herb Dewey, and I think Darren Brown duplicated it in a different way. But the study that he relies on for his explanation of why the cold reader, why the fake psychic is perhaps has the highest probability of getting the results for the clients of any possible person they could go to. The ethical, what do you call it? The ethical charlatan, based on this particular study and studies of its kind. And I'll get to what the study is in a second. But the premise that Herb Dewey was working from for teaching the cold reading to others, because he was the king of the cold readers. I mean, he would go to cold reader conventions where the top cold readers in their business were meeting together behind closed doors. And he would cold read the cold readers and blow their fucking minds. So that Herb Dewey, for anyone who wants to look it up, I'm a total geek about this shit. So whenever I go all in, I just find the pamphlets that they used to only sell, pass on from hand to hand, and somebody put them on PDFs, And I read that stuff, and I think everyone in the world is going to want to read it. It's like I found some secret knowledge, and nobody gives a shit, you know?
I think it's also highly gendered as well, because you tend to find that the crowd that tend to attend these cold reading events are literally 95% female.
The women, they tend to do
They're
it.
usually of a certain age as well. It's like females over 30.
Part of it is that women are natural cold readers, and they don't know it all the time. I've met women who are aware of that fact about themselves, and I've met ones who are unaware. But women, something that I've learned through doing all this body work and breathing on myself over 25 years, that I've been underestimating the power of women's intuition, because now I finally have had long and involved conversations with women about what they notice versus what the men notice versus what I notice, which is some conglomeration between the two, because I did all this shit to myself to be able to become aware of that intuitive level. There's things that, for example, my sister, who was never a seeker at all, she just has 4 kids and does her life, where she has realizations or things that are obvious to her that I thought were hard-won realizations, you know, for me. That it took me 15 years to between discovering that I didn't know a thing and then actually knowing it in my experience. Where to women in my life, they kind of look at me and laugh at one point. And they're like, dude, that's like obvious to us from the moment we're born, you know, but nobody ever asks.
Well,
so
perhaps you could reasonably hypothesize that when it comes to things such as the women that attend cold reading events, and also the mass subscription to astrology, which is, you know, hugely popular with women, much more so than men. Perhaps that's the unharnessed female intuition at work.
Yes.
Because you're right about that. There's definitely a female intuition. I mean, that can partly be explained by more neuroticism in females as compared to men. The whole biological evolutionary biology theory behind that is because obviously the gender that has to take care of the infants has to be more threat sensitive.
Yes.
So by being more threat sensitive, you're able to intuit.
Well, not necessarily threat sensitive, because the man is extremely threat sensitive on a gross level. Like he'll know that, and the women didn't have to become that threat sensitive when the men were strong, for example. So the man could go out and kill 10 threats and come home covered in blood with meat and not talk about it to the woman. His ferocity and masculinity protected the woman from having to be aware of most threats. So she could.
I don't know if that's the case though, because let me just.
Well, she could be aware of local threats, and the man is aware of global threats before they happen. Let's put it that way.
Because I think that they're probably two different things. Because when I say threat sensitivity, as in, you know, the sensitivity to, I'm talking about sensitivity to danger and non-verbal cues that one might be able to pick up from the immediate environment, versus a man maybe more capable of remaining calm, or at least in a mode that's more appropriate for dealing with threats per se, but they might not actually be threat sensitive in an erotic sense, if that makes sense. Like, it's not. Let's
keep it in a caveman level, because we still biologically function mostly on that level, even though, okay, there's issues with the let's just say keep it on a caveman level. My assessment of how women survived, say, this is interesting. It gets into dating. Let me pause this because we're going to go a whole different direction there. I had just cracked open the Herb Dewey because I want to find this little code of ethics that he said. It relates to what we're talking about. And I will mention the study that I wanted to get to. But I just opened it, and on this page, all of a sudden it says this. And this is from King of the Cold Readers by Herb Dewey, and then Thomas Saville, I think, is the one who wrote it down. In practice, women do well at fortune telling. It allows them to make use of their greater sensitivity, their intuitive perceptions about themselves and about others. But then such sensitivity is a prerequisite common to most successful psychics who specialize in personal readings. So that was interesting. That it just came up exactly with what we were touching on with women. So what I want to mention first, and then we can go there if we want.
It is this unharnessed intuition in a way.
You nailed it. Now this is the king of the cold
Imagine-
readers saying this. You know, he's the one who's the master of the cold reading, saying. So we have a little, I wouldn't say proof, but we have a little point of momentum behind what you said. It's not unheard of. It's not just a wild theory or speculation. If it's repeated that quickly by the king of the cold readers in this, you know, off the top of where I'm finding. So as I search for this, I'll say the study was basically, the study was basically that, and I might get the details wrong, and that's okay, because the point is not the details of the study. The point is you have one group of people who are given some kind of psychology test, let's say MMPI, whatever the rage is with the fucking people now. You just scroll down Facebook and you'll see people putting their initials. Now, side note, my opinion is their mind has been hijacked by a frame through which they can interpret traits of themselves and others. It's no different than if they got an astrology reading or break down. What are you, Capricorn? What are you, INFP or whatever the fuck, you know? Same exact thing. We're trying to identify ourselves and others and then categorize ourselves so the brain can stop burning glucose, which it has to do if you stay present to the fucking mystery of the individuals around you. And I'm talking about family, friends, strangers, everybody. It's always mysterious if you're present and not making them fit into your understanding of them and only keeping the conversation around those 5 or 10 topics that you agree on. So that side note aside, the study was, you have one group, I can't find it, but the study was you have one group who takes a personality test, and then they get their results, and they're asked to evaluate the results based on how accurate it is describing them. And then you have another group who is asked to draw their outline of their hand on a piece of paper and give their birth date and birthplace and time. And they're given an astrology reading by a world famous astrologer who's an astrologer to the famous Hollywood stars, for example. Then you give them their results, and they're asked to evaluate how accurate those results are. Now, again, my data is probably off, but the point will get across, so you can go find the exact data, and I'm not that far off. So the group who got the psychology test or whatever frame you want, a scientific frame, okay, we'll call it the scientific group, who gets a psychology test or some kind of science-based results based on a series of answers to questions. For example, they evaluated the accuracy of the results somewhere between, let's say, 30 to 50%, or even lower than that. But I'm going above, so I make an error, you know, don't make too much error here. But let's say it was really low compared to the other group who got the astrology readings, who assumed it was coming from a higher power, some mystical source of God-given divine information, right? The planets, something out there, something larger than life. Whatever, insert any fucking mystical thing you want there. This is Herb Dewey said, create a magical personality that's believable, that shows how you got your powers. And if that story is right, you can get the cold reading 90% wrong and the person's still going to come away mind blown. Set that aside. Here's the trick to the study. Do you know what they gave? Do you know what the results of the personality test and the results of the astrology reading? Every individual got the exact same results. In the astrology group, now Darren Brown duplicated this in his own way, but in the astrology group, they rated the accuracy of the results as like somewhere from 70 to 90% accurate. But it was the exact same fucking results that the personality test people got. So they don't trust.
Being vague, but sounding specific at the same time. Yeah.
So what Herb Dewey does for this, because he's the guy that's the king of the cold readers, and he was so loved and respected by the people who attended his shows. He had tricks where he would memorize things about people, and he had like 12 different categories. So he put in those categories, you put the astrology sign. Then with the astrology sign, you have their date of birth. With their date of birth, and location, you have all these traits you can know about them if they grew up in Michigan instead of Texas. There's so many layers of what he could put into one box, series of 12 boxes. And he would have a gemstone that represented each of the 12 astrology signs. And he would give one of those gemstones to his private client or his public client. He would run into them on the street 20 years later, 10 years later, and they would still have the gemstone, of course. and he wouldn't necessarily remember who they were at first, but when they pull out the gemstone, his mind would go right back. Oh, that gemstone went to people who were this astrology sign, this, and this, and this. So the people would run into him and he'd be like, oh, you're that Capricorn that was da, 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 da. And they're like, yeah, how the fuck do you remember? But he had it all coded into the gemstone, right? But then when they would meet him, they would love him. They would admire him because they would tell him all that stuff you said came true. Look, hold on. Here's my husband, Mark. Remember you said I would meet Mark 2 weeks after our reading, and I did. He had those results so many fucking times that it blew his own mind. He thought, I'm lying to people. How on fucking earth is this true? So the lie that he told them delivered in the right way. And this is how he framed his code of ethics, which I'm about to find here in the beginning of the book. He was telling you how to operate as the fake psychic. And what I determined was that this profession of fake psychic, of conscious charlatan, I'm not doing it right. I just tell people I'm a garbage man, I'm an exorcist, and then they're like, you're a life coach? No, I never fucking said life coach. Not once have I uttered those words to describe myself. But people automatically call me that because they can't deal with the fact that I'm not any of those things, but I have some practices that you can try that are going to fucking blow your mind. And you can try them for free. I make it available. But then people will come and decide who I am, put me in a box, judge it, and so I'm actually not playing the role the way I could. I could come out as a guru. I could come out as a fake psychic. I could do any of those roles I want. I practice them on the streets all the time. But with my clients, with the people who come to me, with you, I want, and this is the deepest nature of our conversations, we're actually talking about deception. We're talking about allowable, acceptable deception, which is the nature of society, which is the nature of all groups. The groups we touched on, the seeker group, it's agreed upon willful deception of oneself and each other, which to me defeats the purpose of seeking in the first place. That's why I never could stay in the fucking groups. Because I saw the borderline, because I would say, okay, so I'm using the sword and we're doing the magic ritual. And then I start asking questions like, so does fire actually ever come out of a wand? Is it like Harry Potter? Is it all imaginary? And then when I start asking these questions, the whole thing falls apart. The people who are practicing it are like, you learn that at level 5. I'm like, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to do level 5 because level 2 is not giving me the promises level 2 is supposed to give me. You know what I mean? And
I think you were probably an anomaly in those settings, because typically what happens in those kind of cults is that they draw in a biased sample of people who have the exact appropriate temperament to be swept away by such suggestions. You know, like for example, in comparison to when I went to see Darren Brown perform, he demonstrated the difference in susceptibility between general members of the public. Obviously, Darren Brown draws in people who are interested in them, but there's still quite a wide variance of people in the crowd that actually go there. And he demonstrated with a hypnosis exercise that was very visual. It was like a spiral hypnotic kind of symbol that was flashing and moving on the stage as he talked, and in this very, sort of entrancing, charming way. And during that time while he was running this exercise, there was about 15 people that rose to their feet from their seats as if they were possessed zombies, that were completely in a trance. And the rest of the people were just completely not. One of those people was my sister, yes. and because the degree of susceptibility varies between people. But when you run a cult, or you're recruiting people for those kind of mass movements, you are making sure that there's a selection pressure in place that selects the exact correct type of people that are going to join.
Are you talking about political parties right now? Do you see what I mean? When it's publicly
I'm talking about mass movements in general.
Yes, and mass could even be 10 people that are moving.
Yeah, precisely. There's a selection pressure in place that draws them in, and there's usually a high amount of agreeableness, naivety, previous traumatic experiences is really common.
Now I have all of those. I can check all those boxes. However, I don't carry around the stories of intensity from my childhood or judge them. You
carry around the temperament imprinted on you, though.
If there's ways to alter all of that. There's ways to alter and to undo all of those.
I thought you were talking about way before you got into this. Though you were talking about.
Way before I got into it, I had no clue about anything. I still don't know. A clue about anything, but
Sure.
But now I'm aware of the deep level of self-deception that I was capable of, and I'm certainly probably still capable of, because I know that only until I see it, only when I see it, well, then I look back and see that I was self-deceiving. But I've gone down that path enough times that I know that I can know with reliability that I'm probably self-deceiving about something right now, probably many things.
I think some of that is at least necessary in part. It's necessary for your parents to deceive you as they raise you.
For what end, though? Necessary in what context?
Well,
for us to continue having a society built on self-deception.
There are lots of lies that we tell that you could argue are useful. So, for example, there's a few ones.
Useful to maintain what set of certain? Useful for what purpose?
Well, I'll give you some examples.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's exactly what Sam Harris said in his show with Peterson when he was talking about everybody acts as if a gun is loaded for safety reasons. Even though it's not loaded, you handle it as if it is, even though that it's a self-deception. It's like, but that's just for safety reasons. Another one is karma. People, whether they're religious or not, buy into the idea that if you do bad things, then bad things will happen to you, which is only a half truth, really, because obviously if you piss somebody off, then you may, foster a retaliation. Which is fair enough, but it does not mean that as a matter of objectivity, if you do bad things, then a bad thing is going to happen to you. That's just like, obviously it's not proven, but many people buy into that. And then there's the lie that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, for example.
Let me stop you at the bad thing. Let me stop you right at the bat. So the idea that if you do bad things, so this is the karma or the sin and punishment, or it's all the same.
Yeah.
Basic.
Even non-religious people believe in it. And even if they don't completely believe in it as a matter of objectivity, they just adopt it as a useful mode of being.
It's mind-blowing to me that anyone who could call themselves Christian for any reason at all could ever think that God is punishing anyone, or that it's even possible to be punished by God. If you're believing in the words of Christ and in the new scripture of the New Testament, as I've read it, and I used to study biblical Hebrew. I dove all in on everything that I wanted to study. And if you start studying New Age stuff, you have to fucking study Bible because it's referencing it constantly. If you're going to study Golden Dawn and all this stuff, or Crowley and all that, you have to go then to Masonry, because there's no way you're going to grasp what's going on in Crowley without Masonry. If you want to study Wicca, like the people think they're Wiccan and they call themselves Druids and all this stuff, and it's fun. It's totally fun to play costumes and go dig up herbs and spices in the forest. I love it. But if you're taking it so seriously that it's a religion, then for me to go all in on that, I can't go with texts that are trade, paperbacks at the fucking Barnes and Noble. But I have to go see, well, why? Okay, so this element is fire and it's in the West or whatever. Why is it in the West? How did someone determine that you put that in the West, and that air, the intellect, is the whatever, the East or whatever? Was that contextual at the time? Meaning the air, you could feel the wind coming from there. Why are the elements in those directions? I don't just accept that and then start doing a ritual based on it to get something I want. Does it make sense? So if you want to study Wicca, you end up back at Golden Dawn. If you study Golden Dawn, you end up back at John Dee and Edward Kelly and the Enochian tablets. If you want to study Mormonism, you end up back at Joseph Smith. If you study Joseph Smith, you have to get back to the Enochian magic of John Dee and Edward Kelly, because that's where he probably made the tablets from. He would have had access to those from British Museum. And then if you study Mormonism, you end up at Joseph Smith. If you study Joseph Smith, you end up at Freemasonry. If you study then the Freemasonry he was involved with, you end up with John Dee and Edward Kelly in England. So that's John Dee and Edward Kelly are source material for Golden Dawn, for Crowley, for like all this other stuff, Wicca. So I just kept tracing the path back of who the authors read, and then who those authors read, and then you find source material. And then the source material is like a smaller pool that you're looking for. So for me, seeking was to keep asking the questions and digging deeper for each thing. But then I see people taking just completely surface level stuff and not even asking, well, why if I go like this, does that mean I'm going to be enlightened? Like why if my first yoga teacher, for example, there's a clip of him on YouTube on this movie Enlighten Up, and the guy asks him, so why, if I'm in the studio twisting myself up in a pretzel, how is that? And Norman starts laughing, the yogi. He starts laughing, and he's like, how does that lead to enlightenment? How does that relate to enlightenment? And Norman says, it doesn't. And he's like, well, so why am I doing it? And Norman starts laughing and says, I don't know why you're doing it. And he's the teacher of this yogic practice. He's the one of the few who brought Ashtanga to the West or whatever. But he's saying, like, the guy's asking him, why am I doing all these postures? He's like, I don't know why. You showed up and I'm teaching you what I know to teach you. So with all these assumptions that doing that is going to lead to some enlightenment. And Norman wasn't promising that at all. He just sits there and has his yoga class, does it for whatever reason he does it. And kind of just laughs when people are thinking, coming with assumptions that it's going to lead somewhere. He'll still teach it. He's an expert at it. He died this last year or two. But yeah, so I found this introduction. This is going to tie in. I know these conversations are chaotic, but I find it valuable and I enjoy where they go. And I like where you're taking it to. And I want to focus on the experience that you had with your sister and have you tell that story again and how you related to it while it was happening. But this was a forward. Let me see here. Not the forward. No, this was just a loose intro to red hot cold readings, which I recommend anyone with any interest in anything we've talked about read. He's talking about Herb Dewey, and it's Tom Seville, the guy who edited the book. He said, I thought I was a fairly accomplished cold reader, and then I experienced Herb Dewey. I immediately realized that his awesome command of the art far surpassed anything I had previously witnessed. I sought him out. Our rapport was immediate. I have enjoyed and grown immensely within our friendship. It is difficult to put into words the respect and admiration I have for Herb, professionally and personally. He's a master of the art with a genuine concern for others. His ethics and methods are above reproach. He realizes the powerful impact he has on others and is meticulous in his care to only plant positive seeds. He strives to help people believe in themselves, to feel better about themselves, to like themselves, and to take responsibility for their own lives. Now, this is a fake psychic teaching other fake psychics to be conscious charlatans, conscious liars. This trait, perhaps above all others, I find to be rare and prized. Each time I am in touch with Herb, I am touched by him, by his warmth and the support for others. So that was just a bit of the introduction about the guy, about how people perceived him as this ethical, loving, compassionate man. So then the basic ground rules, this is in the beginning, before he teaches you anything. He says, we are practitioners of an art, a discipline which has tremendous power. Accordingly, let each person for whom I read be entertained, and let that person leave my presence feeling better about themselves, their potentials, and better about their life than when we first met. Now, that alone is a code of ethics that you could live by and do very, very, very well living by. But then he says, in addition, few people realize the impact that a casual remark may have on the life of a person with whom we are dealing. Research has demonstrated that even when prefaced with a very direct disclaimer, the need or tendency to believe may be overriding. College students have indicated a greater belief in a description based on their birth data than when that same description is based on a personality test. Other college students have seen presentations given by a magician who was introduced as such and who explicitly stated that what he was going to do was all based on deception. And at the end of the performance, many students still believed that he was doing psychic miracles. One of the authors, Tom Seville, had the experience of having to deal with an extremely distraught young woman who was on the brink of a collapse. She and a group of her friends were having fun on a Friday night. They purchased a book on palm reading and were reading each other's palms. Someone in reading her palm had told her she would die in her early 20s. She had been in a panic, had not slept all weekend, and was practically in hysterics when she entered the office of the fake psychic, probably advertising as a psychic, when she entered the office Monday morning. Motto, be very careful. We are not physicians. We have no business in making any kind of diagnosis or in prescribing in any way a course of treatment. We have no basis for suggesting potential health risks or hazards, past, present, or future. So that's their ground rules, and it goes deeper and deeper from there. But I thought that just that alone touches on so many things. It goes to the depth of every topic you and I have talked about since we started recording, which is this deception at the root. Now, what Herb Dewey does, what a fake psychic does, could be called deception. The whole fucking nature of the being a mentalist is deception. But what he's saying there is juxtaposed with this fascinating, fucking scientifically observable, I won't say truth, but scientifically observable phenomenon that in his ethical practice of presenting himself as a magical practitioner with superpowers, and with combined with the ethics of leaving everyone feeling better about themselves and their lives and able to function better in any way they would like to function better, he was able to accomplish something that all of psychology and psychiatry is a miserable failure at. So statistically, it's a miserable failure. We're talking about a fake psychic with one meeting with a person and leaving that person with a life that starts to grow and evolve and develop from that one meeting with him. He respected the power of that one momentary interaction with a person coming for entertainment at a magic show or a mentalist show.
Yeah,
I think Darren Brown has these ethics too. I think watching him over all these years,
there's a distinct ethical difference between, let's say, a psychotherapist and a cold reader.
yes,
An ethical psychotherapist would agree that it's not their job to psychologically intervene as such so that they can direct them on the right path, but rather to get them to help them articulate their own problems so that they can actually solve their own problems, because the risk of intervening and trying to help someone is that you get it wrong and you can't see inside their mind. Whereas what the
so it's kids' glove. They're it's nerfed in gamer terms. They've nerfed the profession.
Yeah, whereas the cold reader, they, at least you could argue that they have the hubris to take it upon themselves, take that psychological intervention and take the responsibility for potentially fucking that person up.
Let's put it this way. Here's where there's an issue. There's an issue right there. It's not that the willful, conscious charlatans, the fake psychics, the cold readers, I'd much rather be read by one who is consciously being a charlatan than one who's not, because like as the example illustrated, when the girls just bought a book of palm reading and one woman just read the line in your hand says you're going to die in your early 20s. Now she goes to the pro fake psychic, and that fake psychic gets her out of that panic and shows her that the palm thing was different or whatever tricks he needed to do to get her out of that. But they can be
convinced of their own bullshit though.
She could have created her own death with cortisol, with the combination of inflammation that happens with constant panic and tension from fearing death. Fear of death will kill you faster than whatever disease you think you have. I'm not a medical guy. I'm just saying that, let's put it in different terms. Fear and tension and panic will never help you get better from any disease. I've never seen it. It tends to not be a prescription any doctors give. Go home, stay tense, stay panicked. Be in fear, watch horror movies, but what I'm getting at is the ethical fake psychic isn't not necessarily capable of hubris. What if they're just observing something that's already a fact, like a physics equation underneath human interaction, where there's no human interaction that doesn't have a profound effect, even a casual remark, like a girl walks into a party and she spent all day putting on her dress and her clothing and her appearance and hiding her acne and all these things, right? And she walks in and she thinks that a person is talking about her, but it's completely unrelated to her. And the person says, yeah, that fucking bitch looks terrible tonight, right? And she leaves the party. And she carries that with her and she never goes out again. Was that person who said that responsible? No, he wasn't responsible. He wasn't even talking about her. But maybe he's responsible because he's unaware of what he's saying and how it might affect everyone around him. Now, that would be crazy making so you might think to live at that level of awareness that everything we says, everything we say, everything we emote, everything we do, everything we are has a profound effect on everyone else we come in contact with, even if we don't think it does. So from Herb Dewey's perspective, what I'm guessing the mindset he was coming from was he saw, because of his line of work over so many years, that there was no casual conversation, even though it seems as if there are casual conversations. And that then he took it upon himself for the rest of his life to make everything that he said to every single person he came in contact with something that would spin them in a way that was desirable, pleasurable, entertaining. He used the word entertainment in the code of ethics, so it's that important. That it was entertaining, that it was enjoyable, and that it would leave them with at least the possibility of momentum for further experiences and further expansion in that way. So I don't think that they necessarily have the hubris. What if they're taking responsibility for something that most of us don't take responsibility for? How our comments affect the people around us at all times, no matter how casual it seems. Because the situation of being alive is not casual ever. We're facing death. Like, we have to put death into the discussion, because then we won't be able to say, oh, it's too extreme to go down that road, or it's too intense or too serious to talk about. Well, no, there's nothing too intense when we realize we're in essentially a trap where it seems like we just disappear, or whatever animates our bodies just disappears, or at least it does in other people. I've seen enough people die in my life that I can't know if I do, but I've seen that other people do. So then that allows us to take the conversation to whatever depth it needs to go to without seeming like it's too extreme. You know what I'm saying? So there is no casual conversation. And I would wager that the mentalist, or that Herb Dewey, for example, became aware, or like Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers is another good example, where every fucking record of every conversation with him was profound on some level, because he was aware of the profundity of human interaction and then wanted to handle it so gently and so compassionately that everyone felt loved by him when they first met him. Because it was true. He did actually have that love for every single individual in front of him. Same with Herb Dewey. And this desire for them to have the experiences and the life experiences and the stories about their life and the way they interpret their life to be all pleasurable and entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, I said you could frame all of that as white lies, the little white lies that never hurt anybody.
Or the white lies that deliberately told and carefully crafted white lies that empower and enlighten and entertain. Since everything we say could be argued, we could argue that everything we say.
Yeah, but the devil's probably in the detail, though. Because,
yeah. Go on. I want to hear you rant.
Well, you don't want to serve to delude somebody. You know,
right.
If you, for example, there's two, according to Sam Vaknin, who's an expert on the development of narcissism.
Obviously, you brought him up in the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, it's a theoretical field of study, but he posits that there are two main ways that a person can develop narcissism, right?
And now, please define it for the listeners, because it's become a household word that means my ex-boyfriend or my ex-girlfriend now, and that's inaccurate statistics.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the excessive grandiosity and admiration for yourself, basically psychologically reconstruing yourself as a god to be worshipped, you know. But if you're actually talking about the personality disorder, that's like one of the dark triad traits, and that the disorder is defined by how much your behavior is actually classified as abuse to other people. But just talking about narcissism in itself, in the general sense, is in somebody who's in love with themselves.
So back to Narcissus, who drowned because he was.
Yeah. Well, Vaknin posits the theory that narcissism develops one of two ways, but it's always from a bifurcation between how people treat you in your life. So, for example, if you have a mother who is excessively abusive and terrible to you, and does nothing but tear you down, and is just the opposite of what a good mum should be, but the rest of the world is praising you at the same time and thinks you're absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Then the effect of that is for your personality to split.
It'll fracture, yes.
Yeah, but the other way that it develops is apparently if your parents are very, 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 very kind to you, they're massively supportive and encouraging, they can serve to delude you to such an extent. If your parents are really, really encouraging, rather, and the rest of the world is just abusive to you, what the theory is that your parents have deluded you to such an extent where you behave as if your value exceeds the value that the general public projects on you based on just the raw basics. And for children in playgrounds, that can be as simple as, how attractive you are to the opposite sex alone. Right. So, if you've grown up and your parents have said, oh, you're so handsome and this, that, and the other, and loads of parents could be forgiven for telling their children that. But the problem is that beauty isn't in the eye of the beholder. It's not subjective. You can predict attractiveness. We know that with them taking measurements of people's faces and seeing how they react.
But there are wild cards. There's wild cards in there.
There's wild cards. Exceptions don't prove rules. Right. Exceptions don't.
But there are some bizarre exceptions that like, it was for a commercial for deodorant or something. I don't fucking remember some product, but they did a thing where they put all these people in a room with no light, no ability to see the other people, and they started having conversations. And then they finally turned the light on after everyone had gained rapport with each other. And what you saw was people, and there was like a big guy with a crazy tattoos, but had a soft voice and compassionate kind of vibe. So people actually became friends after that, or in that. And then when they turned the lights on, they saw, I would never have talked to that guy. You know what I mean? I would never have.
Yeah, but that was the overwhelming majority of those cases were people that were basically not attracted to each other as soon as they actually saw each other.
Right. But then there's a deeper level. There was a guy who he's on a ton of podcasts now. He's a motivational speaker or something, but he was a former meth cook. He was doing it in a moving car, and then the car had an issue, and he could see that the kit was about to explode. So he kicked the other guy out of the car to save his life. And then the door came open, and then the explosion fucking happened without enough air, exploded, and I don't know if he flew out of the car, but he was burned. The result was his whole body was burned, and he wanted to die. He laid in the hospital. He went through all this hell, and his whole life was messed up if he was a meth cook cooking in a car in the first place, right? You can imagine he didn't have money to deal with things. And he's burned all over his face, but you see him, and it's revolting to the human eye. And yet he's got a beautiful wife. His personality is so fucking compelling, so joyous, so loving, so in love with life itself that within seconds, you're not thinking about how he looks at all. And you want to hang out with the guy and you want to talk to him. And he's like, his voice is beautiful. It's insane that his voice came back. It shouldn't have scientifically come back. Like this guy's a crazy anomaly of science and how he healed and could even speak because he inhaled the flames. They burned everything. And so he's a miracle of fucking, in many ways, but there's so many stories like that. A guy in a wheelchair with his legs cut off and burns to his face and has beautiful women all around him at all times. And he's the mayor of his.
Yeah, but the reason they're stories to begin with is because they're exceptions.
They are exceptions, but I think if that's possible for them, then it's possible for a halfway decent looking guy who has a low self-evaluation to actually become very easily, very quickly become a person that gets what he actually wants from the people around him and with them without suffering, without striving.
100% disagree with that.
Why do you? This is great. Why do you disagree? And what do you disagree with?
Because I do not believe that people have that much control, especially as adults, over their own, such as their personality temperaments. I don't think that.
You think they're more set in stone than I do? Is what you think they're less malleable?
I think we're less malleable. We have less plasticity.
What if we just don't have the right tools?
I don't think that one can just acquire such a magnetic sense of charisma such that it overrides the lack of biological attractiveness that you have. I think
you don't think that that's possible. Then how?
Well, I think by and large, I think the majority of cases, and I think reality informs us of that, because if you actually look around, no matter where you go, particularly in Western society, that the choices that women make when they pick their mates, particularally in the modern age.
Do you think there's choice involved? Do you think there's actual choice involved or not? You think it's purely biological determinism? Because I can't tell where that line is.
No, I'm not saying it. Obviously, I understand there's a range of factors taken into consideration when the opposite sex is making their mate choices. But typically, it is the reason you would turn and take a second look at an odd-looking couple is because it's such a rarity where you see an absolutely stunningly gorgeous woman with a man clearly doesn't live up to that degree of attractiveness.
Except not physical attractiveness, but some other he's attracting something.
Sure. I'm not saying the cases don't exist, but I'm talking about by and large what's happening across broad reality. I think for example, I think pickup artists. I used to be into pickup artistry when I was younger, and used to really, and because I got results from it, I used to think, oh my God, this shit really works. But it was Dumbo's feather all along.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. I've made an entire course called Social Anxiety to Social Invincibility. And it was directed at people who I saw were, I won't say victims because no one's a victim, but people who were former addicts to the pickup art world. And I traced out how that would destroy the personality the same way that the seeker world, the more books you read, the more systems you try to cram into your mind, the worse it's going to get. The further you are away from finding what I would guess you're seeking in the first place, which is some sense of inner peace, abiding inner peace, independent of external circumstances. To me, that's one of the highest goals of any seeking would have to be abiding inner peace, no matter what's happening on the outside. Right there, that's where I would scrap. Go ahead.
To me, with the whole game thing and the pickup artistry and the dynamic between men and women, all that subject, for me, it was entirely a Dumbo's feather. Because
I'll explain what that means because I don't think everybody will know.
Well, have you seen the cartoon movie Dumbo?
I have, yes, but I don't want to rely on the listeners knowing.
Okay. Well, in Dumbo, Dumbo was given a feather by apparently a magic feather by one of the birds, I think, one of the crows. I can't remember who he's given the feather by. He's a circus elephant, and somebody convinces Dumbo that he could climb the high dive and jump off of it, and he could use his ears to fly as long as he has the magic feather. And then he realizes towards the end that when he loses his feather, and he's being pressured to just jump off and fly, that he could fly all along. Mm-hmm. And he never needed the feather. And it was effectively the story of the stone soup. Or
the feather was the lie told by the cold reader. That became
somebody who gave him, he told him a white lie. It's like similar to that. Yeah. So I read The Mystery Method, and The Mystery Method makes a very, very convincing case that there is a formula that one can use to attract women, and that was not dependent on your level of physical attractiveness.
Yes. But
it's an excellent placebo, because if you're a man that's a very logical thinker and you possess the reasoning and the intelligence to actually understand the theory, and you can really believe in it, you can actually go into a bar thinking that you're equipped with a secret weapon. And in thinking that you actually really have this secret formula to be successful doing that, equipped with that confidence, you can go in and
you'll get the results you were after.
Yeah, you'll be so effective. But what you didn't realize is that you could do it all along if you were equipped with that same determined confidence.
And this is why there's a need for the role of fake psychic. Now, the role of pickup artist is the same thing as fake psychic in that case. He has no special.
No, because no. I would say I beg.
In this regard, it's similar.
Well, here's the difference. A pickup artist and all of those people that are selling courses on the internet and teaching it, their typical customer that they're selling courses to there'll be people who do it, who gain a sense of confidence and say, yeah, it works for me. But they're not who they're making the large amount of their lion's share of the money.
Subscription plan, just like psychiatrists and psychologists are not making the money off the people who become healed and awaken to their lives.
Yeah, the people that don't become, what it typically will be is men who are unfortunate looking facially. tend to be short, and they just basically don't fit into what is widely considered to be conventionally attractive as far as the opposite sex is concerned.
Yeah.
And instead of anybody being so cruel as to say, hey man, the truth is that generally speaking, you're not that attractive, and the women that you're aiming for are out of your league.
That's not true. I think I would say right there, I don't agree that it's true that anyone is out of anyone's league. Even the highest movie stars, the fucking jet setters, I would say with persistence and determination and the right tools, which are hard to come by sometimes.
No, Ariana Grande is out of Danny DeVito's league, mate.
He could still make it. It could still happen. It could still happen. But we can't test that example. So what's an example that we could?
But even with the exception, with the caveat that we agree that exceptions do exist.
Yes.
By and large, it is predictable.
I'm interested in the exceptions. I'm interested in the exceptions to the rules because what it reveals is that because most people accept the rules as hard fact. But the reason I'm pointing out the exceptions,
the heuristics we should go by for sure, because obviously that's what is.
But why would you? Why not test something outside of? Why not test something outside of? If you're already stuck being like collectively judged by the people you live around as ugly for whatever reason, okay?
I'm not advocating that you call people ugly,
I don't either. But we're saying that in society, because for all of our other conversation to have value on this level, we're assuming that there's some, and there could be a range of this, because if you go to Jamaica, as I've heard, the fat or the obese women, the men are super skinny. Typically, the popular men in that scene are skinny. And the popular or the hot women are these fat ones. And the men that are respected are the men who have a fat wife because there's been so much poverty. This is how it was explained to me. I could be wrong. But I've seen it from multiple different angles in stories that the reason that the man who has the fat woman is more popular or well-respected is because there's a history of poverty. And so it shows that he has enough. He makes enough money. He makes enough. This is the underlying idea I heard. That it's a sign of abundance because the woman, because he can take care of that kind of woman.
I think that's entirely. I would say that's a bogus.
That could be bogus. That could be bogus. But the point, the underlying point.
Number one is actually partially biological. African women tend to have broader hips.
Yes, it can be biological. But set that aside. There's reasons why the fitness craze wouldn't pick up in that particular culture where it picks up everywhere else, and they have internet, they have all that, But setting it aside, just stay.
Again, that's an assumption then, because the universal factors of attractiveness, they're more universal than people would like to admit.
Yes, but there's factors that are universal that are not only physical appearance.
Of course. I'm not saying it's all down to physical. For example, but I would say that it is taking a rather unfortunate turn to becoming more and more shallow in the modern day than it used to be.
Because why do you want to go date a person you think of as shallow ahead of time? Why not find the exceptions to the rule and date them? Wouldn't you?
Because the average level of shallowness across people in the West in general is increasing at a huge rate.
But why be why let it make me or you shallow, or the people, or why should we? I don't want to lower the bar.
I'm not suggesting you should be victimized by it. What I'm saying is being adapting to the environment that you're in.
Yes, of course. So an ugly, let's say a person deemed ugly by a majority of survey takers in any given city, a huge amount of a big data pool. Let's say, okay. So they're judged. I'm not saying I judge anyone as ugly. I don't even know. I think everyone suffers from body dysmorphia. If you look into the studies about body image, it's fucking mind blowing. But so to zoom back out to get to this example, one thing I wanted to address. So if you're judged as ugly by the majority of your peers in a given social group, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter the level of civilized advancement or anything, just judged by that group. Wouldn't it be in your best interest to then start investigating along lines like, okay, I'm not going to try to put on all the super nice clothes, and because what most people will do is try to fake being seen as, so that's why you have makeup. That's why you have plastic surgery. That's why you have different clothing shops and makeovers and all the reality shows that go with it. And a makeover can make a dramatic fucking difference in a life, for sure. And even the Maxwell Maltz book, Psycho-Cybernetics, he was a plastic surgery surgeon, and he wrote a book on self-development based on self-image. And he wondered why some clients would get the plastic surgery and their whole life would change, and why others would get it and they'd stay at the same, because it was their self-image that was at play. So there's factors. If I was, and I don't think I'm an ugly person, I value my appearance as good, and people repeat it back to me, but I might have a biased crowd. I don't know. There's no way to verify these things. But if I were aware that I'm deemed ugly by all of my peers by physical appearance, I wouldn't keep putting my skill point, my experience points in the skill tree of physical appearance. I would just stop that search completely if it was already proven to be a failure. And I might dedicate all my efforts to studying the exceptions and finding commonalities between those exceptions of people who were admired and had attractive personalities, being judged as ugly by most of their peers, and yet were the life of the fucking party everywhere they went. And then I might, if I found those commonalities, then I might have something I can start to test. And as I would iterate until I arrive at, you see what I'm saying? So to me, there's a short path for every human to get what they think they want. And I want to help them do that if they come around me. This could be any of my friends, anyone I talk to. I love witnessing people get what they want, so they can see that that's not the source of peace and happiness, getting what you want. And when I work with people who think of themselves as poor, most of their desire is to get more money, because they think having more money is going to provide the solutions, or the ability to get higher level solutions to get them closer to the things they want. When I work with people who have an abundance of money, their problem now, the way they frame it, is what has happened is they thought they would be satisfied and find inner peace through achievement of goals. And now they've achieved so many goals, they see that they're still not excited beyond 1 second or 2 days after getting the trophy or the reward for achieving the goal. And then they've tried to buy peace and happiness through hookers, through drugs, through parties, through becoming a pilot, through doing adventures, through doing whatever. It's almost always the same, but it's a different list of stuff. So their problem now isn't anymore. Now they're in a worse position than the poor person, because the poor person can strive forever for the rest of their life and be self-victimized by saying, well, I would have done X, Y, and Z, but I never had the money. And everyone accepts that at that level, at that conversational level, at that class level. But then when I interact with the people who have all the stuff and have all the money, they're still just as dissatisfied as the poor person, but they're in a worse trap, because now they've done everything that society has prescribed that promises peace and happiness, and none of it worked. So when I work with them, they don't no longer have the ability to victimize around money, because they know that money didn't get them that thing. Maybe it made it easier to delay the suffering for a while, but the existential suffering is the same. It remains the same in every single human. So the only thing that brings peace is 100% acceptance of whatever the fuck's going on at any given moment. That gives you the ability to deal with any crisis, any threat that actually appears, is presence. If you're not present, if you're panicking, a real threat appears and you're fucked, because you're incapable of movement. You don't have the muscle, you don't have the calories to do it because you've been tense all day. You don't have the awareness to deal with it because you've been lost in thoughts all day. So if a real emergency appears, you're less able to deal with it if you're tense. If you're, this is in the samurai text, like we referenced, they would never do an assassination with any emotion. They would go home until they could swing the blade as if it was like the same as cutting butter. They wouldn't do it because they knew there was some amount of deception going on inside them. They either cared too much, they were angry. They would never kill out of anger because that's completely stupid. You're being controlled by forces that are not don't have your best interests in mind. So then we come back to I got a little lost there, but it does relate. So I know it all relates. I trust that because I listen. I don't listen to these all the time, but when I do, there's enough data in here that people can take and run with something. So the point was, the reason I focus on the exceptions If I'm in a medical situation, for example, where a doctor who's unaware of the power of language, like Herb Dewey is directing any cold reader must remain for the rest of their lives, if they're going to use these power tools, they must remain intensely aware of the power of even the most casual seeming remark that comes out of their fucking mouth forever. And if they don't, they now bear the responsibility of having not been aware and making a casual remark that might have led to someone's death or suffering or demise. So Herb Dewey was living a life where he was bound forever to be always aware of everything he said at all times to every person who was around. There was no casual. There is no such thing as casual. There's no such thing as casual sex, no such thing as casual conversation. It all has potential to completely change the course of your entire life. And so the studies show that's proven, that every remark might be perceived as not casual by an onlooker who you don't even know exists, because you're involved in your conversation and not aware of the greater context that you're in and the power of you as a human in relation to the other humans. So the more you learn, that's what's meant by, with great power comes great responsibility. You know, it's a cliche, but the truth is there underneath it. If you become aware, your perspective widens to see that everything that comes out of your mouth or my mouth has the power of life and death in it. Then wouldn't it be the natural ethical next step for a so-called good person to then study and become, to gain some mastery over knowing how and why and whatever the words that come out of your mouth could affect people, and then craft that in a way at all times to serve the best interest of oneself and others. Wouldn't that be what you would do?
Mate, to give you an idea, my profession.
What is your profession, by the way? See, I go into this naive because I don't want to have any judgments beforehand. So I don't even know.
No, it's fine. Like I'm a professional salesperson.
Oh, you are? So, this is interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So, I have my career, which stretches.
So it's a necessity for you to have cold reading. Every salesman has to have, even if it's unconscious, some amount of cold reading skills.
Well, whether or not I would call it cold reading or not,
let's call it being aware of the client in front of you and what they want, what they think they're going to get by buying the thing from you. And you're selling stories, right?
I need to understand how to behave in an influential manner, in as many aspects as I can, as competently as I possibly can. And so that's why when I was referring to, pickup artistry and all that kind of thing, being able to influence male to female attraction, which obviously, that's a holy grail kind of discovery. It's like, really? Is that true? In the completely hedonistic sense that one might have as a man in his mid-20s, you're going to go, right, okay, well, if I can learn and master that, which many men do, which is why it's such a gold mine online to sell these kind of courses. It's like, well, if I can learn how to do that, then that's great. So obviously that the attraction is easy to see, but the more and more I delved into it, and as I grew, I grew disillusioned with it, similar to how I grew disillusioned with the study of psychology. Because when you get down to it, you realize that it's largely smoke and mirrors, and what predicts attraction between people is actually really, really simple a lot of the time. It's a way more shallow than we're ready to admit.
Why are we not ready to admit these things? That's I'm like a naive, retarded child. And I like to stay that way. And that's the only reason I'm alive after being in crazy parts of Bogota, Colombia, where I shouldn't be as a gringo, because I'm naive and retarded. No one kills the retarded guy. If I had any knowledge of where, go ahead.
People don't, tragedy is part of the human condition. And we do what we can to eradicate it.
Why not celebrate it then with everything else?
Well, put it this way. Life has become, if you look at it from an objective standpoint, in terms of how much absolute abject suffering has been taking place in the world today versus
parent suffering. Now, how much? Now, the thing we have to draw a line here.
Let me finish my thought.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
So if we measure, okay, so starvation, people being tortured, being killed in wars. The
slavery at an
sort of
all-time
stuff.
high. Yeah.
Yeah, and people dying from diseases. People used to have 10 kids as a regular thing, knowing that 3 or 4 of them might die before they hit 5 years old or whatever.
Watching Vikings was very useful in that regard, of seeing how the constant presence of death leads to a much greater level of celebration. Just to throw that out
the
there.
Appreciation of your own survival. So
which is
basically,
lost, which is currently lost to most folks. That's why the for example, any kind of illness could be used as a fear tool for people who are unaware of death. For me, it was so mind-blowing. If you look back at my poster on March 2020, I lost so many friends and family members who called me the worst kind of shit you could ever imagine, like all caps, homicidal, sociopathic serial killer, because I said, hey, don't close businesses, don't wear masks. This is where it starts. Just don't do it. Just ask yourself, should I keep my business open or not? Don't listen to other people. And if it's yes, keep the fucker open, because you have an ethical duty to stand with your fellow fucking humans and call out bullshit when you see it. If you don't, then we're making each other suffer and making a smaller and smaller group of people who are willing to be honest bear the burden for everyone else. So I called that out way back then, and I said, look, it's as if people didn't realize that every 2 days there's a car that leaves the hospital full of dead bodies and is driving to a crematoria to just torch them. It's as if people forgot prior to 2020 that any humans ever die, and then suddenly in 2020 human death appears on the planet, like it's as if
this is why I was just trying to explain, like, with the experience of less and less let's say abject suffering, such as dying from diseases and dying in wars and murder rates going down and so on and so forth, we become less resilient to misfortune itself.
Yes.
And the less resilient to misfortune we become, the more we create lies to basically rule out certain tragedies of the human condition, just because
creating other tragedies in service of that effort. That's what's mind-blowing.
As an unintended consequence of the tragedy. So for example, so if we go back to the example of the pickup artist, let's say there's a pickup artist and he's got some guy under his wing, and this guy is very unfortunate looking. He's not very attractive. He's got everything going against him, and he's got horrible social skills, and like everything's going against him. But the pickup artist is constantly basically feeding him the pitch, which is like, look, all you need to do is get better at what I'm teaching you, and you're going to see results like X, Y, and Z. Now, the person who's teaching, it can be under his wing, and he can chase that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for as long as he likes.
And he can
and he can face continual disappointment. Now, it's not obvious that the endless pursuit of something that never actually arrives it's not obvious that that's worse than actually suddenly accepting that what you want is never going to happen for you, and you might as well pursue something else as opposed to pursuing what won't happen for you. Because you could argue
you never know if it will or won't happen. There's only certain times where you can draw that line, like the shortest fat guy probably won't be the NBA star, right? But he could end up being a fucking mascot for his favorite team. I mean, there's a million ways that could go.
Sure. But the thing is, if you really to employ your sense, and the data that you've compiled from the world, and really, really get down to the bare bones of things, you should know that a 5 foot, fat Japanese dude is not going to succeed in the NBA. All right.
Except he might end up becoming the owner of a team. He might know all the players. So even in his supposed failure, but we can't say.
And he could be well suited to so many other ends.
Right, but what if the only thing that makes him happy is going for that goal? knowing he'll never.
How could you possibly know that that's the only thing that's going to make him happy?
Let's just say, regardless of all these other options, he just doesn't want to fucking do them. No matter how many personality tests he takes, no matter how many specialists tell him, no matter how many teachers and gurus he goes to, no matter how many close friends.
I would say that that's possession. That's being possessed.
But what's wrong with it if he's satisfied? If he's satisfied with it.
Because if it translates to the pursuit of your own destruction, and that's not something that's going to be good to be possessed by.
Why is that wrong?
Why is it wrong to pursue something that only results in your own destruction?
Because it doesn't only result in your own destruction. What if the path there was exactly what that person wanted their whole life and they got it?
But I think that's
why is it wrong for him to die at 60, having done only what he wanted to do his whole life, versus dying at 90, feeling like he was trying to live up to other shit he didn't
But it's not necessarily something, but the thing that he wanted to do was for the sake of something that he wanted to achieve that is unachievable.
But what if he doesn't care that what if he just wanted to, what if he knows that from the beginning and is willing to take the adventure anyway?
Okay, well, you can keep specifying conditions under which this hypothetical person might actually find happiness, but I'm trying to articulate something that's actually what's likely to be the case in a scenario where Danny DeVito is trying to be an NBA basketball player.
Yeah.
And, ultimately you say, but what if Danny DeVito just wanted to be a basketball player? Well, how about that's a silly thing for him to do? And what he should have done is pursue a career as an actor because he was good at that.
Right. Yeah, and that's fine. And I agree with you. But I'm saying, but we have to know. This is where it all breaks down out of statistics, out of statistical analysis, out of everything, because at least for me, when I'm in front of you, I'm going to honor the individual that you are. And if I'm not judging, if I'm telling the truth, that I have some amount of abiding inner peace and love for my fellow man and woman, even the ones that I never want to be around because they're violent or whatever. And I have been around them, and they are interesting. I mean, they are violent, and luckily I didn't become the target of the violence. But that in my line of work, I found that in order to be honest over all these years, and I look back and see that when I got a new perspective shift, if I judged the courses I made prior to that perspective shift, they would appear dishonest to me now. If I did that same course I made 15 years ago. Well, however, if I give that, so I stopped selling any of those courses for a long time because I thought, oh, those are dishonest. Now I'm bringing them back out. I'm putting them into an app and putting them up for sale because the point at which the person thinks they need what's in that course is the point at which I delivered that information to those people at that time in history. And it actually was one step in the direction that is where my ethics are founded on, which my ethics at the base of everything are, and they're changing. If new information comes, I will adapt to those. But my ethics at their root, or the principle that I try to serve, is to honor the free flow of life force first within myself. So I would value relaxation over tension generally, the exception being tension in order to use tools, whatever. But I would favor the free flow. I honor and take delight in and seek to encourage the free flow of life force first within myself. Because if I'm not flowing and then I'm trying to do it out in the world, I'm a liar. So first to address that in myself and where it's blocked up, to find ways to let it flow, whether that's blood or nervous system or neuron synapses, all of the above, and anything else I didn't mention. And the same goes for rivers. Now, I would prefer a river that doesn't have dams in it over a river that does, because that honors the same principle externally from me. I can receive an argument that the dam is necessary, and I can go along with it because I live in that town where it would be flooded. Okay, I can accept that, but I also have to accept the fact that dam might break, and that I'm built in a place that's a floodplain, period. And then a flood happens and they rebuild in the fucking floodplain because it was a 100-year flood, and then it floods again in 2 years. So they're not gathering any data. They're not living a rational life whatsoever. They're just hoping and wishing that science will save them. Science of a dam, building a dam, which is 99% good, but the exception fucking matters in that case, because the exception will blow the dam, which happens all the time, and flood the town that was banking on that 99% scientific certainty. So we have to fucking study the exceptions every time, because it's the point at which the frame in which the logic of whatever science is taking place or whatever inquiry is taking place falls apart. It just cannot, it doesn't even have questions.
I would never say that we should not study the exceptions. My point would be that we should not regard the exceptions as if they are indicative of something that would be likely to happen. You know, it's like, it's not.
Right, we would never build towns in the floodplain if we didn't accept that. It's
The leaning Tower of Pisa is leaning, but it wasn't designed to do that.
No, it wasn't.
And nor should we look at that and think, okay, well, we should make all our buildings like that.
And there's some architects that do that, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's not. You understand.
So the point being, like, if there's an exception where there was formerly 99% conclusion, like, for example, that societally deemed ugly people can never be as attractive as societally deemed attractive, physically attractive people. So that's a conclusion that you're arrived at.
We see it play. All you have to do is observe a woman, the general public, the women at large. All you have to do is observe their decisions. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like
right. But I'm saying that it doesn't matter to me that 99% of the world wants to be a rock star in a band and play shows and get admired for their music. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter that that's unlikely that I could ever do that. I'm still going to record and play my best and play gigs and play my best.
But that's
no
not,
matter
that's
what.
That's not an analogy. Because,
but most people will never get started on the path of becoming a rock star because of statistical analysis, where someone like Kenny Rogers, who's like a household name for, like, say, 2 billion people on the planet right now at minimum, that he did not get famous till he was 40. And the entire time, the thrust of the pressure around him, the social pressure of his family and the people around him, and they all even testified to this in all the millions of biographies about him, that he would not give up. He somehow just said, they all said he did not get famous. He was like a loser musician until he was 40 years old. And then at that point, there was even more pressure saying, you're 40, you can't be a rock star. You'll never be famous. You'll never be famous. Give it up. Do something else that you'll be good at, like work at a factory, do like your examples before. Do something else that you're good at. And he just said, fuck you. No, only thing I want to do is be a rock star and do this music. And then it happened. But if it didn't happen, here's the point. I know, I follow you. I'm right there with you. It doesn't matter that statistically it's not right. It matters that if that's the one thing that gets him out of bed and nothing else does, it could be better for him to fucking have a family, or, you know, have a family and do work at the factory. But he'll want to kill himself. Because the only thing he fucking wants to do is play music.
That's not the dichotomy I'm drawing. I'm not saying that it's between being a rock star and working in a factory.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, I mean, the dichotomy I drew earlier on with Danny DeVito is not the fact that he was an inferior person as a human being, but rather inferior in the domain of basketball.
Yes.
He would be better suited as an actor. Now, the same principle applies to a man who's, let's say he's 5 foot tall, he's got some mad deformities, he's an unsightly man, unfortunately. That's just the hand he's been dealt.
Yes.
You know, and he decides to enroll in God knows how many courses with God knows how many different pickup artists online in pursuit of that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow where he can have the woman of his dreams.
Yeah.
Now, I am saying that 99.99999% of the time, that is time foolishly spent.
I agree, but
time, money, and energy.
Why? Because so that's showing
because
that
it will not yield the results that is worthwhile.
Do you think that if you don't get the goal, that the journey was not worthwhile? Like if I rock climb and I'm going to try to do a climb that's way beyond my skill level, if I make it 95% of the way and it blows my fucking mind, so I now attempt more and more at that skill level.
That's not an analogy, because if you say how much,
if I didn't get to the top and I never tried that again,
how much satisfaction have you ever derived from being 99% successful at attracting a woman? You either did or you didn't. You know, like.
But what I'm saying is, if he studies and practices all the other things he has control over, he doesn't have control over his physical appearance, period. So if he focuses all his attention on, and we have tons of time as humans right now, we have more time than any human that ever lived had free time. way fucking more, like an insane proportion more. Like, and that means, it doesn't mean everyone will do it, doesn't mean everyone can do it, but it means it remains within the domain of possible, that if he's directed all his efforts, instead of on these bullshit courses, instead of all this other stuff, if he was honest with himself, then he would not be able to be lied to by the people selling the courses. And I'm not saying they're wrong to sell the courses. Sell whatever you want. If people buy it, that's proof of fucking concept. Who cares? I don't give a shit. Because you can't cheat an honest man. That's a true fucking statement. And it took me 20 years of carrying it around in my head to really understand the profundity of it.
I don't agree with that.
Doesn't matter. No, we'll get to. Well, that's fine. We don't have to agree or disagree. I love talking to you. That's so. We win no matter what. If you're enjoying this, if you're not enjoying it, then let's make sure you are. You know, that's where I'm at with conversation. Like, it doesn't matter if we ever agree. You have an open invitation to come to Osijek, Croatia. We'll have a beer. You'll love the fucking town, the culture. It'll be amazing. So I want to establish that, and this is important for our listeners because this art of conversation is not as easily found on Facebook anymore, and yet it lives on in real humans. We can disagree about everything. I don't give a fuck because we have a rapport that's deeper. I like seeing your face. I enjoy when you disagree, my mind gets fired up. It's firing places I haven't investigated yet. Even if we don't complete a whole story, it doesn't matter because in conversation at the bar, we don't complete all the stories. Someone else comes in, some shit happens. There's a car accident across the street. Normal human conversation doesn't have always, it has open loops. That's why we go meet with the same people week after week, you know, if we're lucky, because there's open loops all over the fucking place. So I'm not trying to put on the appearance of a podcast. That's why I said it's a whatever we call it, even though people call it a podcast because it's hosted in podcast places. But this isn't a podcast. I'm not trying to live up to what I'm supposed to do with a podcast. I'm not trying to make this conversation sound like I complete all my points. I don't get lost in conversation. I'm just being me. And then I love where we interact, where we find points of agreement. It's like, that's just another place where we can start to explore and find places of disagreement, where I'm going to learn some shit. I'm going to become aware of shit that I wasn't aware of. But I don't have to draw any conclusions about myself or about you as a human, no matter what we agree or disagree on. Not at all. There's no force in me that says I have to judge you on any level or myself for any reason. And then we're free. So now you see, back to my first principle for my own life and my work is I honor the free and spontaneous flow of life force. I honor the free and spontaneous flow of conversation, of water, of rivers. And that could go against what some people want. They want the electricity that comes from the dam. Okay, I'm not going to work on the dam. I'm not going to fault you for working on it. You know,
I am going to have to freely and spontaneously, abruptly end this conversation.
That's good. That's good. That's a good point.
I'm quite hungry and
excellent. So biology enters the picture. Let me ask you one question. This goes right back to the beginning. Did you know the band Alabama 3 from England? A3.
The name rings a bell, but I may know one of their songs, but
so it doesn't matter. The line I wanted to conclude with was from a song, and it relates to you being in Bali and the beginnings of our conversation about the seekers and the seeker lifestyle and mentality, which tends to erect a barbed wire fence between them and finding what they're intending to find by seeking in the first place. So the song line is in the song called Ain't Going to Goa. So they were like a famous, popular rave band, and they would sing to their rave audience, but they would make fun of them at the same time. In the song Ain't Going to Goa, let me find it here. I had it prepared, he says, and it's about drugs and all this stuff. And then he says, there's this sort of rap country sort of style they do. And he's speaking this part, and he says, because the righteous truth is, there ain't nothing worse than some fool lying on some third world beach wearing spandex, psychedelic trousers, smoking damn dope, pretending he getting consciousness expansion. I want consciousness expansion. I go to my local tabernacle and I sing with the brothers and sisters. And then it goes into this whole music, thing. But I thought that's a nice way to, you get what I mean? Does that relate? There's a song called Ain't Going to Goa.
I identify with that quote entirely. There's plenty of that out here. So yeah, I'll totally get that.
Yeah, I know the lyrics, yeah. I believe I'm gonna shut down my chakras, shift Shiva off of my shelf, take down my tie-dyes, my Tibetan bells, cool down my karma with a can of OPT, which is a shitty fucking street beer in England. Ain't no call for Castaneda in my frontline library. And in the chorus, there's one thing I know, Lord above. I ain't gonna go now. But it's a fucking trance hip hop song, like trance, whatever, EDM. And then ain't dancing trance, no thanks, I ain't dancing trance, no thanks, no chance to tranquilize me. And they're playing trance music. Ain't sipping no small bar drinks, no, that don't satisfy me. Dosing up my dharma with a drop of gasoline. I ain't down with Mr. McKenna, tantric mantra talking, don't move me. It's like, what a song, but played to the audience who's coming to hear the type of music you'd hear going to Goa,
Mm-hmm.
So that's Alabama 3,
Good idea for a song.
Man, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I know we opened a lot of cans of worms and things, but I appreciate your willingness to go down those roads with me, and I hope you had fun. And this was just a mystery. We just reached out on Messenger, made a connection, jumped on a call, and I've had a blast. And I like your mind. And I knew it from the humor I saw in your Facebook posts. I could just feel like this is a guy I want to vibe with and communicate with. So for me, I win, because whatever happens in the conversation, I'm excited by.
Sure, man. Look, I appreciate the appreciation, man. It's been good. And we can definitely do it again.
Yeah, I want to leave an open loop for a possible future conversation, because you said you're a salesman. So this final piece is, if we talk again, if we do another recording, if you're willing, I want to have a focused discussion on this premise: the skills it takes to sell a $5 item, or like go to door to door and sell vacuum cleaners, of which there were amazing salesmen, a few, or encyclopedias, or used cars. The skills it takes to sell a used car, in essence, as I understand sales, are the exact same skills you would utilize to sell a yacht or to sell an island. Now, there's going to be differences in the details, but the core person-to-person communication skills and sales skills that are universal in sales are the same, whether you're selling something for 5 cents, which is hard work because you have to convince someone that it's valuable even though it's priced at 5 cents, are the same skills that you would use to sell yachts or islands or vast fucking swaths of land, or anything, or tanks or missiles or whatever. So you could, any salesman who's mastered the core skills. So that's my premise for a future conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely talk about that. I think that's probably true if you stripped it down to its bare fundamentals, although I would say stripping it down to fundamentals quite so bare isn't a very enlightening or... So
why wouldn't a person who masters sales scale up as far as they can go? Why would they stay at a level where they feel impoverished?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, like, in response to what you just said, you could argue that, the fundamental prerequisites for selling a $5 item are precisely the same as the ones that you would use to sell a $500 million item, which is, you have to convince the person who's potentially buying that what you are selling is more valuable than what they currently possess, i.e. the money. And you have to change their perception to make them think swapping the money is a good idea. That's the same whether you're talking about a $5 item or a $500 million item.
Yes.
However, the details that concern either one of those tasks are so dramatically different.
Yes.
That it's like me saying you and I are exactly the same just because we both got 2 arms and 2 legs.
Right.
It's like...
And that's like 98.5% true, or even maybe more higher percentage true on all the details that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like, 99% have the same DNA, and, we're nearly the same as chimpanzees. Well, we're not the same as chimpanzees.
Right, exactly. There's obvious differences.
We're mostly different, so even though you observe it on the DNA level, it's like, oh, we're mostly the same. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, semantics, but
it's important. It's important. I think that we touched on a lot of things that I was unaware of while we were talking, but I think there's some meat in the discussion. So, like I said at the beginning, anyone listening, take out one thing that you resonated with. Doesn't matter what, and investigate it for yourself. That's what I meant by there's only one true scientist. Because no matter how many other people do studies, no matter how many other people write about those studies, to use Schrodinger's cat thought experiment as the prime example, until you've seen the fucking cat, you don't even know if the experiment exists. It could just be an article you read. There's only one scientist, if you're going to be honest with yourself. And until you've opened the box, you can't claim that Schrodinger even exists. We can rely 99% on the idea that he probably did, but we have no way to prove it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's only one scientist. It's got to be you or me or whoever you are, because whether you like it or not, you're stuck in yourself. You're stuck in the fucking problem of the brain in a vat thought experiment. No matter how many times you try to argue around it, you're still the only one doing the arguing. So conduct experiments in your life that seem like they might lead you in a direction that's entertaining and joyous and fun, and just rinse and repeat. And I don't think, even if you fail at all those things, if you have entertainment and joy and fun and exploration built into the experiments, even if you fail at achieving the goal, the path there is a lot more enjoyable and fun. And isn't that what the original goal was in the first place? To have more fun, to have more peace, to share experiences with other people, whatever it is. So even the path toward the ultimate goal might not arrive there. You've built in some satisfaction and peace along the way. So that's kind of where most of what I was saying is leading to that point. So I don't disagree with pretty much anything you said. I just say, even if it's all true, you might as well continue conducting experiments for your own satisfaction, whatever that means to you, because I can't determine it for anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it's a theory.
Yeah, but test it. I would hate it if anyone believed anything I said just because I said it. I would feel horrible about that.
Yeah.
I'm just some dude, why listen to me? I mean, I put out content because I like recording and talking to people. If you listen to it and follow it, that's on you. Like, I can't help you.
All right, bro. Well, it's been an experience, and I shall speak to you very soon.
Cool. I hope it's at least 50. I hope it's at least 50.1% positive, at least.
That can safely be said, for sure.
Okay, excellent. Then my job here is done. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's been a delight.
Yeah, back at you, man. Appreciate it.
And keep in touch. If there's anything you want to talk about or anything I can do, just reach out. I love hearing from everybody.
No doubt, man. All right, man.
Okay. Enjoy.
Later, man. Cheers. Bye.